The Titanic, a turning point in history, the reason there are rules for boats. Almost everyone can agree that the Titanic was one of modern history's most tragic disasters at sea. Even nowadays, people are still trying to make their way 2.37 miles underwater to see the monstrosity. But let's be honest, as of June 2023, it could have been going better. The sinking of the Titanic has made a huge turning point in history. It just wasn't great at physically turning. From the number of lifeboats to iceberg warning systems, the Titanic was more than just romantic. This short film will explain and inform you about how the Titanic has changed history.
The Titanic's construction began in 1909 in Harland and Wolff shipyard and continued non-stop for 2 years until May of 1911. On April 10, 1912, over 100,000 people would watch the massive boat begin the long trek from Southampton, England to America. The Titanic was split up into 3 classes: first, second, and third. First class mostly consisted of rich people, the second mostly composed of well to mid-class tourists, and the third class being full of people trying to start a new life in America. However, the workers of the cruise liner took your class as how important you are. So by looking at this graph right here, you can see that the percentage survived goes in order from highest to lowest classes. For example, a quarter of the third class survived, when around 60% of first class survived.
After 4 peaceful days of traveling across the ocean, disaster struck. It was around 11:30 p.m. on April 14th when lookouts in the crow's nest saw a faint white silhouette. They rang warning bells and called the bridge to alert them of the incoming hazard. The crew set the boat propellers to go in reverse and tried to turn the boat, but it was moving too fast to slow down in time. While this was happening, the captain was asleep in his cabin, even though he had received radio messages hours earlier warning him of the icebergs in the area. The Titanic hit the iceberg. Well, not that way. Luckily, they managed to avoid a head-on collision, but damage was still done. A 300-foot gash was ripped in the ship.
The Titanic was made up of 16 compartments, a series of massive rooms intended to contain floodwater in case of hull damage. A 300-foot gap was enough to fill 5 compartments with water, causing the problem. The Titanic was only designed for 4 compartments to hold water before a cool physics-y, nerdy, blah 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 thing happened. The weight of the water caused the ship to lean a bit, which caused water spill into adjacent compartments, and so on until the weight caused the ship to break in half and then sink. In the process of the cruise liner sinking, there were other problems revealed. The Titanic had 20 lifeboats, which could hold up to 1,300 passengers. Unfortunately, there were 2,200 passengers and crew on board, nearly double the lifeboat's absolute maximum. And it's not that hard to tell that tragedy would strike.
Well, what about a rescue boat, you may ask? The nearest rescue boat was the Carpathia, which was 4 hours away. The Titanic would sink in about 2.5 hours. So all things summed up, it was a race for the lifeboats. The Titanic's unofficial name was the Unsinkable, and due to that, few people went into the first lifeboats because they were so confident in the Titanic. Some of the first passengers to react to the sinking were the third-class passengers, mainly because their cabins were located at the bottom of the ship. Remember when we said that your ticket class related to how important you were and how third-class people were at the bottom of the passenger priority list? Well, the Titanic had some gates separating third-class levels from the upper levels. Usually the gates were left open during the day, but closed at night to prevent lower-class passengers from moving freely in the upper-class area. When the disaster was well underway, the crew decided to be big jerks and lock those gates. This is considered the reason why so few of the third-class passengers survived.
Eventually, after third class flooded into the second level, everyone else finally caught on that there was a problem. And that is when panic set in. They began fleeing to the top of the ship, either based on the water flooding to the lower decks of the ship, or the ship beginning to have a noticeable tilt. All told, there were some serious flaws and failures that led to a mass casualty when the Titanic sank. As a result, there have been some major changes to safety regulations when it comes to cruise liners, such as lifeboats.
As it says in an article from the Crystal Law Firm, after the sinking of the Titanic, the British and American boards of inquiry decided that the ship should carry enough lifeboats for everyone on the ship. There would also be required lifeboat drills and inspections to divert another mass boat sinking accident. That same article also mentions how the iceberg systems changed when the Titanic sank. First developed in 1914, the International Ice Patrol was founded to alert any sea vessels traveling in the shipping routes in Europe, Canada, and the United States of America of any icebergs. Today, the U.S. Coast Guard runs the International Ice Patrol. Continuing in the article from Crystal Law Firm, it talks about how we build ships now so it doesn't crack in half and is more stable. It says, after the Titanic, ships started being redesigned for safety. The ship's bulkheads were made higher so water could not get in the bottom in the bottoms, and the bottoms were stretched to create double holes. These changes are all contributed to a better, safer, and more reliable sea travel that's never coming back.